Well, good afternoon. There was this natural silence sliding in. Lecture, RTT. I will put it a little bit lower, not to spoil your ears. It's good this way, in the back, yeah? Louder, less loud, okay. Like other service providers, I do record my own sort of contribution tonight with the potential that I put it on the Blackboard environment, just in case I say something sensible today. If then someone, based on our rule of law, privacy and all the other considerations, thinks that it should not be on Blackboard, then send me an email and then we will discuss how to blur or I don't know. My name is still Ernst van Bemmelen van Gent and I'm a lecturer, and today we will do 4 things. We will do a interactive, technology-based, who is who, 7 minutes with cities and interest and stuff like that, with wooclap.com. We will look at the planning and the expectations of the RTT, the thesis, with deadlines and stuff like that. And we will, before or at least after the break, go over all the actual items of the assessment form. And the research question, the hypothesis of today and the upcoming 300 days is that if you know those 9 categories of the assessment form, then you can align your product, your thesis, in such a way that you hit all those items 100% and get a 10, as promised last Monday. And why discussing that? Because, like with other texts, these categories contain words, and these words can mean many things. So what we do is interpreting words. And in that sense, we are doing exactly the same today as we do in other classes where we interpret words. But now these words are directly directed to you and concerning you and dealing with you. So law is interesting, but this sort of 2-pager is today the most important. I mentioned already the fact that I'm a researcher, I'm a lecturer, I'm a attorney at law. My bar association obliges me to announce that. I don't know why, but maybe that you then watch your steps, or I don't know. In my research, I make a distinction in the types of practice a legal professional can have in 4 categories. And I wish to share that with you because one of that categories, the scholarship, the legal scholarship branch of the legal profession, is especially important for you today because your thesis is a product in that realm. Let me explain. So you could define legal professionals along areas of law. For instance, labor law. But labor law as such means many things. For an employee, it means protection against the employer. For an employer, it means sort of guidelines how to treat an employee. For a legislator, it means that they have to make labor law. For a judge, labor law means that they have to adjudicate on labor conflicts. And for legal scholars, with the label I'm labor law, you have to review and study labor law. And so, in my view, areas of law are not very helpful to identify, to distinguish, to define what a legal professional actually is doing between 9 and 5 as a job. And as an alternative framework, I think that you could divide those professions in 4 types of professions. And they are represented by the interests you represent while working, and then the 4 types are then divided along the 4 types of interests that exist on the globe. You have individual human beings, let's call that private interest, and as a legal professional you can assist such a person in its role as family member, employee, consumer, traveler, migrant, inventor, what have you. The next interest out there is the commercial practice, as in businesses. Businesses have this, if you study economics, it's a little bit more nuanced, but let's frame it as their aim is to produce profit. That's one P. And then to sweeten us, they have 2 other P's, people and planet, but they come after the profit. And as a legal professional, you could assist such a enterprise in commercial practice in 2 ways. As an independent service provider in a law firm or advisory firm, or inside such a firm as a counsel, legal counsel, in Dutch bedrijfsjurist, and all kinds of other labels. The third and biggest interest is the interest of the state or the society in a sort of territory. And the people who are then the recipient of legal services are then the civil servants of the state in the legislative branch. Then if you're a legal professional, you're a law-making jurist in the broad sense of the word. In the executive branch, for instance, in all those authorities and enforcement bodies, not only criminal, but also for food and drugs, and for finance, and for technology, and what have you. And a very important civil servant is the judge. And we always, in law school, position that judge in a very special way because of rule of law, and they're appointed for life and independent, etc. But ultimately, they are a jurist, like you and me. They are a civil servant. They get sort of salary. In the Netherlands, we have 1,200 of them. And their task is to represent the interests of the society, the state, through the mouth and through the mechanism of law. But that is, let's say, their task as a jurist. And then if you are, as a professional, not in one of those 3 practices, then I have a reserve practice. Let's call that the general interest practice. Think of Greenpeace, Amnesty International, and academia. Then, in those practices, you are not representing a private individual or a company or a state, but law as such. Technically, you could be in all 4 practices in 1 week. Especially when you work in a big law firm, then officially you are serving companies, commercial practice, because they pay the most. But companies have directors, those are individuals, and they have divorces and car accidents. So they are then also helped in these types of law firms. Then a municipality or the state as such, or a province or a central bank could be a client of such a firm. And then many of these high rollers in the big firms, and we all know where they are, in the big cities, in all the countries, they quite often have a position as a part-time professor in one of the universities. So those legal professionals manage to combine all those practices. Each practice has its own type of product, type of style, type of language, and you can imagine how you could divide it. So if you have private individuals as clients, you need to write and speak in a sort of very understandable way. We have, in Europe, language levels A, B, C. We tend to talk C2, and 70% of societies, plural, has a B2 as a maximum. So in private practice, you have to speak B2-ish language or lower. Where maybe as a judge, you need to be very precise. You cannot avoid to speak C2, etc. And these types of considerations are a underlying theme for your thesis. Claim 1, a thesis is a typical product of the general interest practice. Meaning that in your style, in your recommendation, in your approach of that project, you are not writing as if you are assisting a private individual or a company or a state. Why? Because that is not objective scholarly writing. So one of these criteria we will discuss after the break, the most complicated one, has to do with this theme, and that is why I present it right away. So we are trying this week and all the upcoming weeks to move you, for the time being in this program, in this general interest practice, this scholarly approach, which then benefits all the other practices and your career, wherever that goes. So when we discuss, as an example, the question, am I allowed to use the word I and I think, then that is not the issue. The issue is, are you writing with the right addressee, the right audience in mind? And we will discuss that based on the available audiences, and we distinguish 4 of them. So that is just an example how my research links to something you have to do, writing a thesis, and to make it concrete, to point at you as a scholar. Then we are mobilizing our screens. Go to wooclub.com somehow, somewhere, smartphone, laptop, whatever. And then I hope that the first question appears. Does it? Or not yet?
Yeah, cookies.
Sorry?
Cookies.
Okay, second question. All right. Okay. And now? Yes. All right. The question is, in the first theme of the night, who is who? We are now starting to talk about you. In which city are you currently living? And then broadly understood. So I'm not asking for a municipality registration, but according to your feelings and own definitions. All right, let me see. All right, this is the right one. So the first question is about where you are commuting and living. So the good news is that quite a few of you managed to land in Utrecht. And then we have Shanghai. I'm living in The Hague. I was born in Zeist. I've lived in Arnhem. And the Dutch version of The Hague is Den Haag. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, let's move to the next question. And that is about your previous degree. And and this is always interesting. And I'm not 100% sure whether WooClub is mixing the categories digitally, because I see Gouda. I know Gouda as a train station. Just kidding. Yeah, cool. Groningen, Utrecht, The Hague, wonderful. Okay. I will post this on Blackboard. And then we are slowly but gradually, before we even talk about the thesis, already curious about potential topics. One of my daunting tasks in December, January is to do a matching exercise between your thesis topics and 15 supervisors. A sort of human-operated Tinder exercise. And it starts today. Is it open? Ah, here it is. Okay. Yeah. I see ethics, and I see Dao, which is one of the schools of ethics. I see digital ID, consumer protection, cybercrime, and these word cloud software programs are not very intelligent. So cybercrime and cybercrimes are two entries, where we as a legal scholar would say, well, that is potentially one category. Crypto assets, blockchain, tiers, I like that one. Too extensive. We will work on that topic. Yeah. Because one of those mantras, one of those statements, one of those claims, I will repeat often, and this is then the first time. The thesis is an exercise. It's a proof of competence that you're able to do the trick we will discuss today. So it's not the last thing you will write, and it's not your last attempt to bring world peace and other goodies to the world. So, in light of the too extensive. Okay, let's move back to my slide on the thesis topic. And let's discuss the link between the 4 main courses of this LLM and your thesis topic. And what I wish to share with you links a little bit with my idea to not look at legal professionals as areas of law, but from this interest perspective. So let's first redefine the 4 main courses in terms of practices. Let's take the course in the upcoming quarter, Rule of Law, where I'm one of the workshop lecturers. And that is about, let's make it easy, about fundamental rights. And the claim and the message is that in all the practices and in all the areas of law, fundamental rights play a certain role. They form the rock bottom, they form the framework, they form the boundaries within which you can operate and move and not beyond. Meaning that you could look at the law enforcement course of Gavin from a rule of law perspective. And actually, every other week, certain fundamental rights are discussed in the enforcement class. Among others, one of the fundamental rights being privacy, broadly understood. The regulation of markets is also, or could be framed in a rule of law and a fundamental rights framing, being the fact that it's a fundamental right to own property. Protocol 1, European Convention of Human Rights, to own property, being a company, a intellectual property right, a machine, a technology. So that is a fundamental right. And it is not up to states to regulate or limit the use of property without good reason. So you could look at the whole phenomena of European market regulation as a sort of constitutional course in what are we allowed as states or European Union to do against these companies out there. The consumer protection or the consumer course upcoming period could also be framed in this fundamental right framing, being that the aim of European Union consumer protection regulations in the broad sense is to protect those fundamental rights of consumers, of privacy, of their property in the sense of their income, hence regulation on the amount of interest rate banks may charge, which is not necessarily technology, but as an example, how you could frame consumer protection. But the other way around, let's take the private practice, let's take the consumers of Bram Duivenvoorde, period 2, and then take that as a framing of, for instance, the course of Siebe de Vries and others on regulation. Because the whole aim of European Union regulation of market technologies is to protect the consumers and to achieve such a protection through the realization of a good functioning market in the sense of the right amount of products on that market in the right quality for the right price. That is one of the ways how you could frame such a whole course. Similarly, the enforcement course could be framed as an all exercise around suspects. So if law enforcement is about, in lay terms, chasing suspects who are breaking the law in the broad sense of the word, then one way of framing that, as criminal lawyers quite often do, is, okay, prove it. So let's start with the suspect, and then you have to arrange solid legislation to justify enforcement, and then in exercising these authorities, you have to take care 24/7 of the rights of that suspect. Lastly, as an example, let's take the commercial practice, businesses as a framing. All these courses tell an individual business what is possible, what is not possible. Half of you will work for commercial practice one way or the other and will translate the learnings of this program and all the other programs and your life experience to coach, assist, guide such a business in its operation, meaning that our role as jurists is that we can tell those people in the business, this is allowed, this is not allowed. If you want to do this, you can do it like this and like this. So you could frame the course of market regulation as a in-house lawyer training exercise. This is allowed, this is not. Or the enforcement, where it comes to protection of data, that it is an information package of how to protect your data against encryption and cybercrime, etc. And in such a way, I invite you to develop your ideas about your topic and your thesis. That you ask yourself, okay, first claim, I need to write as a scholar, but ultimately scholars are in the society and their products are fruitful for those other interests. And that is obviously part of the equation, part of your content. So almost all theses ends with recommendations. That's a sort of scholarly tradition. First recommendation is for the state, the public interest, with a recommendation like, my conclusion is that the law is rotten, fix it. That's sort of one type of recommendation for state practice. Another type of recommendation pursues the interest of the commercial enterprises with words like, now we know the boundaries of behavior of this type of product provider or creator. So if you are in that industry, please read my thesis and act accordingly, roughly. And the same with private practice, where some individual rights in transportation, traveling, migration, online consumption, that can all be translated to recommendations for individual persons, like don't click on the OK button that often because that does not work or is a fallacy or wrong in the first place, or all kinds of other recommendations average students make on the basis of their analysis of the law earlier. So my next question to you is to envision, no, wrong start. The reality of legal education and law school and the legal industry is that we are organized in areas of law. So Utrecht University and most other universities on the globe have public law departments, criminal law departments, private law departments, and international European departments in Europe. The technical design of the four main courses is on the basis that each of those four departments are offering one course with a separate theme and separate secretaries arranging blackboard and rooms and stuff. So you are customer of 4 shops, not 1. And accordingly, the supervisors are coming from all those 4 departments, meaning that in their workload, they have, let's say, their Dutch students in their masters 100% on private law, or criminal law, or international law, or public law, constitutional law. And they have this unique master where all those departments are collaborating for one group of students. And the next question is to envision how you could translate your topic, your preliminary topic on the screen to such a division. So I ask you to help me a little bit, not only today but in the coming months and especially in December, to hint in your thesis proposal, which is one of the deliverables we will discuss in a minute, pertaining to in which department you would ideally see the home of your supervisor. And then, after having landed such a supervisor, and we will discuss that also, there's an event coming up in December, and then we return to the focus of the scholar and the interest, and not on the area of law, because that is quite often not helpful enough. So when I make this claim concrete, then the market regulation course is of the International European Law Department. The law enforcement, I call it cybercrime, Gavin hates me for that, but the law enforcement in a transnational setting, the longest title of a course ever, is having a home in the criminal law department with the name Pompe Institute. The period 2 course circling around consumers is having a home in the private law department with also the name Molengraaf Institute. And the rule of law course is having a home in the department with the name Public Law and Legal Theory. So all the philosophers of law are in that department. So if you want to write on ethics and Tao, try to arrange it in such a way that you have a supervisor in that corner of our law school. So I share this with you so that you can trigger our Tinder matching activities with the appropriate buzzwords. So if you want to end up with a public law department person who can do commercial practice, private practice, as claimed earlier, and then the buzzword constitution or fundamental rights or legal theory are then ideal. If you want one of the supervisors out of the community of the International European Law, then buzzwords are Luxembourg, Brussels, regulations, stuff like that, and so forth. You can do the math. And that is my idea of coaching you in your thesis trajectory, as claimed earlier. I believe, yes, this is then the last interactive thingy. Is it open? All right. And now? So this is just a preliminary guess-based exercise. And obviously, one of those claims I had on Monday is that each course you are in is the one and only theme you want to embrace. So naturally, the two courses where you are actually in are having a better sort of connection with you than those are those in the future. Okay. And there are 11 people undecided. Can I push them for one more minute? All right, 8 to go. Or maybe people are double logged in with iPhone and laptop and iPad. Okay. So I will talk to my friends from Rule of Law to throw in some intellectual seduction techniques to raise that number. Don't worry, cool. Okay, let's move to the next topic, and that is the thesis writing and this RTT course. Let's call it a course. Let's settle on the definition of a thesis. It's a text with roughly 15,000 words that is having this style of a scholarly article. I mentioned that, this general interest practice. And it's a proof of competence that you have this collection of learning outcomes defined in the brochure and in the course description, Schedule 2, which could be summarized with academic thinking and working competencies. Those are the highest level of skills and capacities we recognize on the globe. And that means that being an academic or an academic graduate means that you are fit for all the difficult jobs out there. And the definition of a difficult job is that your boss is not knowing the answer of the stuff you are working on. And if you're lucky, the salary is correspondingly at the highest level. Although there's a very odd tradition on the globe that, for instance, female human beings doing the same work getting less, and other things. So guys, I'm looking at you. Don't allow that to happen in your future companies. And the girls, don't accept it. All right. Female students, women. Proof of competence means, what I said earlier, and I repeat that quite often, that you only have to show that you can do the job, that you can do the trick. In the sense of a thesis, that you can identify a topic, a research question, collect data, write some form of bundle of arguments, reasonings, inferences, a conclusion, title page, footnotes, numbers of pages, done. If you are in a research master, 2-year master we have here and some other space, then there's an additional requirement that you have to solve a new problem out there. But that is not necessarily what we are looking for in this thesis. So if you are capable of processing existing knowledge and existing theories for a newish topic and setting, that's the expectation. Because that is what academic working and thinking in the labor market entails. So look yourself in the mirror and don't exaggerate. Don't think that this is your last chance to come up with the world-saving theory and stuff like that. And why do I emphasize that? Because all human beings, including myself, when you're in a topic, you get enthusiastic. And this is what we do as humans. Then we think, okay, let's solve it once and for all. Quite often, the topic or the problem behind the topic is sort of outrageous and problematic and really hurting people. So slowly, from a sort of technical, theoretical discussion, we move to hotter ground where we realize and say out loud that the topics of law and law and technology in particular are complicated and really affecting people, and maybe that technologies cause misery, and the average interpretation of what the underlying aim and theme of a legal professional is in the first place is that we are on the globe to alleviate that misery. So there's no website of law schools where we say we train you to increase the misery. So somehow there's an implicit, we don't want to be too priestly or sermonly and massage your soul, but let's say it out loud that your ultimate task, and let's look in the Constitution where, and when you're an attorney at law, I promise to better people's lives. So that's sort of very concrete. So that is a component of being in a topic, and then a factor, a energy source to push you so much that you are not finished by Friday, June the 30th, 2023. So one of the things we do as supervisors is to say we love your topic, but please cut it in 10 pieces and then select one. And then 1 month later, we do the same exercise. So you end up with 1% of your original project plan. All right? So maybe you can smooth that process by, in your preliminary proposal, January-ish, that you make a list of the components of your topic and tell me and the supervisors, and I already myself cut it in 10 pieces and my thesis will be this part. To show that you know that you have to focus, limit yourself and be precise. And point 4, 1.4, that exercise is exactly what most of you will do in your future career. Not necessarily in the scholarly industry, but every little piece of topics in a company or for a private individual or in your state practice is similar, with even more hysterical deadlines. As in, Monday morning you get the problem on your table and Friday you need to be done with 10,000 words. So what we simulate with 40 weeks in total and 10 weeks very concrete activity, you will repeat, but then 100 times faster. Alumni, students tell me. And they survive. So you will complain, and you will suffer, and tears maybe even, but it's nothing compared to what's awaiting you. So the only... Yeah. There's a solution. Don't work. Continue education, but at a certain stage you run out of money or like that. So that about a thesis. And then please realize that you saw many scholarly articles already in the reading list of the current courses and in the past 5 years, whatever you did before. you encountered scholarly articles. So you're not the first one who is inventing the concept of a scholarly article. The bad news is, don't tell my colleagues, that quite a few scholarly articles are not that good. So when I say, please copy what is before, please pick the good ones. Example, there my colleagues agree, half of all the scholarly articles out there do not contain a research question, which is a sin in higher education. So we need this imbecile-proof section of your thesis, my research question, and then please do it in prose and not as a bullet point, but we need that. Although the examples are not doing that. So my concrete task is, make a note of that, start collecting scholarly articles that you actually appreciated, where you had this sort of wow feeling, as in, hey, I understood, it meant something, it resonated with me, it was not too long. So all these sort of student perspectives, as in, there's an exam, this is mandatory reading, and then look at those pieces that were actually useful for your exam in the past. And then we are digital, so put them in a special folder, my good examples, but if you're a little bit old-fashioned, make a print, and then put it somewhere on your breakfast table as a sort of inspirational piece of writing. Well, and I mentioned it, point 3, the idea is that you do it yourself. Again, your future career entails solving problems that no one knows how to solve, so by definition you have to do it yourself. And then yes, we talk about teamwork, and yes, we are working in teams, but within the team you have to solve your problems yourself. So teamwork does not mean that you're there for the coffee and that others are doing the work. And so don't misunderstand this sort of teamwork that when I don't know what human rights were anymore, then I can ask. No, that is not how workplaces are. You're supposed to know your stuff. And that is what we simulate. And then the RTT tries to assist, and that is then the reason why I will explain all those components. Let's start with some rock bottom planning. There are 7 items. There are 4 lectures. There are 4 tutorials. And there are 4 deliverables. Deliverables as in very concrete items you have to submit digitally in time, and if not, you end up in all kinds of problematic zones where no one wants to be. First deliverable, a preliminary research proposal. A topic, a research question, a little description, some literature, a hint for the Tinder matching process. And on the basis of those preliminary proposals, I will do, in collaboration with the whole team and all those 4 departments, the matching process. Deliverable number 2, on the 13th of March, at 8:59 minutes, that is on a Monday, and that's 1 minute prior to the start of a new cycle of Capita Selecta. So that is the last minute of the previous week. That is the official final research proposal. And deliverable number 2 brings you 2.5 credits. And that is a full swing proposal containing all the ingredients and descriptions of the ingredients of your future thesis. Meaning that by then you already have read and observed and searched 25% of your data and your thesis content, meaning that whatever plans you have in these seasons holidays, also known as Christmas holidays, but that is not inclusive, skip all those plans, thesis. The research proposal is assessed by your supervisor and the second reader. The second reader is a colleague, also having students, and then we have crossover readings to avoid that one supervisor is getting lost in appreciation of work. So that is a 4I principle. And that second reader you meet again half a year later in the assessment form, where there's a second reader signature under your final grade. So he is, or she, is the sort of hidden, you know the name, but you're not actually meeting that second reader. But that is the second audience you write for. So supervisor is the first audience, second reader is your second audience, addressee, and then mankind is your third audience. All right, so in that hierarchy, to be pragmatic. Then on the 12th of June, that's the 8th week of period 4, you have to hand in a full draft thesis. The exam regulation actually says that if it is not a full draft thesis, you're not entitled to feedback anymore. So, please include page numbers, title page, your name, ladies and gentlemen, table of contents, literature, list, etc., etc. So that is the ultimate goal, the 12th of June. And then, within 10 working days, but often earlier, you get the one and only full feedback of this whole project in writing, according to the style of each supervisor. So either you get an email with all kinds of bullet points, or you get the PDF back with all kinds of circles and highlights on it, or a combination of the two. Or maybe, no, and on top of that, a 1-hour session with your supervisor where the supervisor explains the feedback and you can ask questions, and it's a sort of collaborative coaching setting where the supervisor is assisting you in staying energized to fix remaining dots on the I, or missing pages, or misconceptions, etc., to finally hand in the final one on June the 30th of June. And that is a Friday. And on the Fridays, the deadline is 2300 hours 59. That is 1 minute before the Saturday and the end of the year. That's actually the last minute of your tuition fee. So that is the basis, meaning that apart from some technical nitty-gritty, we have this plagiarism test software called Urkund. Each supervisor has a Urkund email address, like Ernst van Bemmelen van Gent.urkund. or @uu.nl or something like that. Send it there. Send it to your supervisor, send it to the second reader, send it to your mother or friend or others who helped. And as we will see, one of the assessment criteria is professionalism. And one of the components of professionalism is your capacity to dealing with deadlines. And also how you communicate around missing deadlines. And that's a skill too, because in your future life, half of all the deadlines you will miss. And then you have those managerial phrases like manage expectations, as in sending emails, but not that the world is going down, but that somehow you will deliver a little bit later. So not too much tears in your communication, but not too little. So that is a skill in itself, isn't it? I see some experience. No, but on birthday parties you hear people talk about it. Get it? Before the break, so we have those lectures. Today the assessment form, and then next week we will do philosophy of science. So we will try to frame legal scholarship in the debate of data, empirical approach, and these types of buzzwords. And then Nadia Portova will deliver a lecture on actual research methods in the legal industry. And Catalina Goantas will give the fourth lecture on literature review and all kinds of other ingredients very helpful for the actual work of writing the thesis. And then the 4 tutorials are exercises. So small groups, 15 students, and then you talk, and we will force you to articulate research questions. Because hypothetically you're all capable of doing it, but when you actually have to do it, then you're, and that's sort of brain programming. And so we work on grammar and sentence constructions until you hit a line that looks and feels like a research question, and so forth. But those are limited sessions. So we could fill a whole year with that, but the whole idea was that you do it yourself, and you did it already. So these are also meant to take away misunderstandings, / tell you how Utrecht on average is approaching all these themes. So not ultimate truths, but sort of reflection. This is how we look at these topics. Let's have a short break, 10 minutes, and then we talk the assessment form. See you in a bit.